Hello and welcome to the Emerging Technologies Horizons podcast. I'm Arun, Seraphin, Executive Director of NDIA's Emerging Technologies Institute. On today's episode, we are coming to you from NDIA's 23rd Annual Science and Engineering Technology Conference here in San Antonio, Texas. The focus of this year's conference is how the department is aligning its investments in technology to the national defense strategy and operational needs, from technology discovery to capability delivery. Special feature topics for this year include the S&T needs of the humanitarian and disaster relief missions of the department, as well as talking about success stories from the S&T commercial adoption and SBIR programs. My guest today is James Chu, who's the chair of the NDIA Science and Engineering Technology Division. He's also Senior Global Group Director, Aerospace and Defense with Cadence Design Systems. In this role, James is responsible for leading a highly matrixed organization to work with the executive branch, legislative branch, and the defense industrial base to transition benchmark commercial electronics design and verification best practices for the sustainment of current and development of future DoD and intelligence community electronic systems. In his role, more importantly, as chair of NDIA Science and Engineering Technology Division, he helped create the new NDIA Trusted Microelectronics Division, the annual NDIA Global Strike Conference, and he reinstated the annual Army Science Conference when it was running. He's also responsible for the great event we're at here today in San Antonio.
Thank you very much.
Prior to all of his NDIA work and work at Cadence, James has 37 years of experience, served as a propulsion engineer for Boeing Aerospace Company, a senior engineer for Sparta, program manager for the Air Force Rocket Propulsion Lab, director of rocket propulsion technology plans and programs for the Phillips Laboratory, which was part of AFRL in the old days, assistant staff specialist in OSD for weapons technology, and deputy director for air and surface weapons technologies for ONR. I've known James for well over a decade, and he's helped me out in all of my previous roles, and so it's just a great privilege to be with you here today at your event at San Antonio.
Trust me, the privilege is mutual. It's really nice and exciting to be here. I love the fact that you're with ETI. I think this really shows an exciting direction where NDI is going. I think it was needed, especially in today's day and age, that they're working not only globally, but also in terms of science, technology, and everything like that. So thank you very much for having me. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate that. So let's start by talking about the S&ET division. Can you tell us about what the goals of the S&ET division are, how you became the chair of the S&ET division, and how does this actually complement your work, your day job at Cadence?
Well, the S&ET division was actually started by Dr. Lou Medin, who was actually a political appointee in the Nixon administration. And when he got out and he joined NDIA, he was really looking at a way to kind of increase collaboration because, initially the DoD, and still is, the largest investor in science technology, but the allies they thought partner countries would benefit from it. Well, we've watched this community grow and evolve. Something that has happened, and it was so exciting. I've been a chair now for can't believe I'm saying this, 15 years, but we kind of went from a period of technology stagnation, if you will, because we weren't fighting nation states, we were fighting terrorists, and that required something a little different thinking. But it did help us in terms of different thinking, in terms of what is technology readiness, what is this valley of death, and what can we do to try to counter it, to now going back and fighting a state adversary. And that requires a different way of thinking. And I think that one of the things that myself and two of my board members, both of them former retired colonels in the United States Air Force, bring is that I think when we got into this business, we kind of had that Cold War mentality. We sort of knew what it was like because we were there when we watched the Soviet Union collapse. And then we went through this period. And now we're going back to yet another state adversary. In a way, we kind of know what the playbook should be in terms of science technology. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to bring to the table. As an example, this year's conference, so we're not talking about kinetic effects. We're talking a humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. That to me is, I've been lucky enough in my professional career and in personally to travel the world. Americans are very much welcome wherever we are. And nothing is greater than, as my friend Ben Riley once told us, when we went to Afghanistan, we put a field hospital in the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. the word that there was an American field hospital went through, and people were traveling hundreds of miles to go to that American field hospital because that's American medicine. And we all knew how compassionate we Americans are, especially when it comes to helping people we do no harm. I didn't realize this, but at the time, the perception of Americans in Pakistan was very low when we first went into Afghanistan. After that Army field hospital went in, it went in like 90% favorable. This is one of those few things of how we can counter these state adversaries. The fact is, we are known as a compassionate type people. We are the world's 911 force, whether or not people know that or realize or not.
It's great you bridged over to the conference because I wanted to talk about that. So we're here in San Antonio at the University of Texas. Why are we here in San Antonio at the University of Texas?
Well, a lot of times people like to hold conferences in the same places all the time. And that's good because it gives you some stability, but it's bad because you sort of see the same thing all the time. Innovation, knowledge, needs, they're different in all different parts of the country. We try to go there and say, okay, well, what's here? Well, this just today in today's some of the talks, they talk about this is sort of military central here. People don't recognize how much DoD activity there is in San Antonio. And you listen and go, wow, this is very, very interesting. So we try to look for different places intentionally, and also to try to tap some of the S&T innovation that's going in some of these parts of the country. And you can see what this facility here, what they're trying to do, just in that respect.
Yeah, we're in a great new collaborative facility that UTSA has built to work with the government, to work with the campus, to work with industry, and we're taking advantage of it ourselves.
Absolutely.
I think the other advantage of being here in San Antonio, which we saw this morning, is NORTHCOM's presence and Army North being here. Can you touch on what they're doing at the conference here?
We intentionally are trying to focus on a different COCOM annually. A lesson learned that we had when we first started invited the COCOMs, who, by the way, all wanted to participate, which was very nice, is that, yes, everybody kind of was able to touch on what they're looking for, but there wasn't really a focus to really do a deep dive. So this year we said, we've been focusing on CENTCOM forever. Last year, as you know, we focused on AFRICOM, EUCOM, and SOUTHCOM. And we said, why not NORTHCOM? They have a very unique mission, and frankly, these guys are on the forefront daily, operating in the AR with the different types of things that they have to deal with. Just today, listening to the 3-star who addressed us, where with Lieutenant General Evans, who he says, "Look, I'm going to be getting together, folks, to say, what if we have one of these hurricane seasons? What do we have to do? Where do we have to make sure that?" And, they do all the way from that, natural disasters, all the way to what's going on the border, all the way to any type of terrorist, new types of incursions and threats that they're seeing for these state managers. So I want people to see that. I want people to say, this is why this is a little different. And so when we start thinking about what can we do to help these folks, this is something that's unique that we might want to take a look at.
So the focus on NORTHCOM is excellent at the conference, and the focus on the S&T needs of the HADR, Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief Mission, is also interesting. Like, as you touched on earlier, we could talk about power projection, we could talk about kinetic effects, we could talk about cyber. This is a mission area which is important for DoD. It's important for the nation. My previous life in working on Capitol Hill, it was important for the members of Congress to feel like the investments we're making in DoD are also supporting these mission areas. But then when you think about competition with a peer competitor, let's talk about China, for example, they are very actively performing humanitarian assistance and investment in parts all over the world to gain influence,
Sure.
right? So talk about the importance of this HADR HADR mission, and then how does S&T actually fit into it?
Well, it's one of those things that, it's kind of the bright, shiny object. Obviously, we have a state competitor that says, well, here's how the U.S. does it. Maybe we ought to try it. I believe, it's the goodness of the American spirit has been demonstrated for centuries. And something that we are known for is that if you think about on the HADR side, when we go into do military operations, the thing we also do is rebuilding. And so we kind of have that mission to kind of help people get back up on their feet after a conflict has been resolved right there. This allows us to kind of be what I call the preferred partner of choice. We go in there, we know what we're doing, here's what's going on. And, in a way, I don't mind somebody else coming in and helping, because if we've got two big countries help make the world better in terms of these types of disaster, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief type incidents, maybe better. And maybe, you never know, it might help the two countries find common ground in there. Maybe if we work together and actually help people rather than trying to find some way to be competitive in a military sense, wouldn't that make a little more sense?
And so what are some of the technology areas that you think we're going to be talking about in the conference today and over the whole week that might support those mission areas?
I think you're going to be seeing a lot of stuff in terms of what could we do for rapid deployment of trying to put together a communications network as quickly as possible, so we can get dominant domain and real-time awareness of what's going on there. What are some things that we could immediately start putting in infrastructure to make sure that people's common needs are met? We just heard today about in terms of all things, water. What can we do to go in there such that we can make the water in there? If it's not drinkable, well, how fast can we make it drinkable? How fast can we bring in just the basic needs so people can get their lives back to normal as quickly as possible? How much can we put the power grid back together again? These are things I think that will be important. And I think there's going to be, and what I love about this mission is that, to me, it's sort of a true dual use thing too, because we do have civilian agencies that need that, but also a lot of stuff can flow into our everyday lives. We take a lot of stuff for granted. We talk about the glow stick. Remember where that came from? Yet here now it's used as a party decoration. But the fact is, it started off as a humanitarian assistance, disaster relief type effort right there. So it'll be very interesting to see what else people are going to be talking about in this area today. I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder, quite honestly, but I will say, I think that one of the things that keeps us on this edge is that at least in the S&T community, everybody always wants to try to find a way to do better. Some things I talk about is the one area that everybody is kind of, if you want to be good at S&T and do well, you always have to kind of be curious, not judgmental. How does this thing work? What can I do to make things better? How can I take 2 or 3 components and design it into one thing to make life better for everybody?
At its core, the event is a science and technology conference, and the lineup of speakers is just amazing. Willie Nelson is the Army S&T executive. We've got DIU's acting director here. We've got AFRL representative, DTIC, DSCA presented this morning on their S&T needs. NORTHCOM, like we said earlier, is going to talk about their S&T needs. You gave an opening presentation for the conference talking about what we usually talk about at the S&T conference, the state of S&T in the Defense Department, in the defense enterprise. You've been around a long time. And the world has changed a lot. The relationship between defense industry and the commercial sector, the rise of China as a competitor. What do you see as the major changes that you've seen over your looking at this ecosystem that Defense S&T system has undergone, in keeping up with the mission set and keeping up with the changes in the world?
That's a really good question. One of the things that I noticed when I became active in NDIA, and frankly, when I came back to the DC area in 2004, was that all the critical technology areas that we invested in pretty much were determined by this one Air Force project called Project Forecast. That had all the critical tech materials, electronics, energetics, all that. We did that. And what was sort of interesting is that it had the effect that we wanted, which was not only keep us safe and promote national security, but economically it made us stronger, because every single one of those technologies were then taken by the commercial industry. And you see where we are today. Commercial puts in so much money, always bleeding edge all the time. So what's happened, I think, is that what's very interesting is I think the labs, the DoD S&T labs, the service S&T labs, have tried to ride that wave on taking a look at, okay, here's what we can invest in, but how much can we leverage from the commercial side? And oh, by the way, what can we do to kind of be smarter in terms of understanding what the real end users' needs are? That's why I talk to the people in the arena. Go talk to the guys at the depot. Go talk to the guys who talk to the maintainers. Go talk to the soldiers. See what they really like. Don't design something that's so exotic that as I said, you never have a first chance to make a second impression about a technology. It kind of goes away. But the other thing I think it has also shown, quite frankly, is a need for change in terms of how we do the PBBE for science and technology. It's ridiculous.
Which is the budgeting process.
Exactly.
Planning, programming, budgeting, and execution.
It is absolutely ridiculous that in this day and age, you're asking the DoD to operate in science and technology in a world where S&T is actually being funded and progressed by venture capitalists. It's kind of crazy, actually. And then there's no agility whatsoever to say, that's kind of hot. Let me go take a look at that and take a look at it for right now. And then if I act like a venture capitalist. Well, if it doesn't work out, well, okay, we told you, but put it back on the shelf and see what comes out of it then. So I think that what has shown is kind of a need to have a more agile, at least on the I see it in terms of the services side with the Air Force, the Army, this would be the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, and all their labs doing wonderful stuff. I think on the OSD side, we need to really look at how it was when I joined the staff, believe it or not, back in the mid-'90s, where I was working for Anita Jones and DDR&E, and there were 90 of us managing the program. And you take a look at the org chart today, and you go, I'm not saying one's worse, one's bad, one's good. I'm just saying, if you had that many people that were managing a budget that was about the same size, and you see that today's staff is some multiple of that, are you really being agile, or are you now, have you built up a system such that it is difficult to be agile and innovative? This is something to think about.
The department is under simultaneous pressures to steward taxpayer dollars and to be more agile and to keep up with the commercial world. Cadence is a commercial technology. That's your day job in addition to your NDIA duties. How do you feel the department's done in trying to work with the commercial sector, take advantage of that commercial innovation? What more would you have them do to be more open to the commercial sector?
I think it's a couple of things. The first off is that if we need, the biggest impediment I see in terms of the DoD adopting commercial technologies is that, or the only way it seems to be introduced is through the lab system. And that's okay until you realize these guys, the guys in the lab, great guys, wonderful, they do wonderful things, they're not on the bleeding edge. So the first thing they take a look at is that they don't understand it. I got to learn about this. And so you're frustrating these commercial guys that are doing something every day and say, why do I have to go back to first principles to explain this to you? It just works. However, those people are sort of the gates to do it. Something that I've been really thinking about, and I've been, you and I chatted about this in the past. One of the dumbest things we did was get rid of the revolving door, what we call about, where you get government people going to industry and industry people going back into government. What is wrong with industry knowing how government works and how government knows how industry works? There's nothing wrong with that. And can you imagine? And we do.
Sometimes that confluence of interest is actually beneficial to both the taxpayer and the warfighter.
Exactly. And listen, I've been with these guys in the lab. They say, one of the things that still offends me the other day is that, well, you're wasting taxpayer dollars. What does that mean? I don't quite understand what that means. Every year, we review the program, we take a look at, we get a chance to see where things are going right there. Progress is being made. I imagine some of the people would have said, you're wasting taxpayer dollars when they're doing all this stuff in terms of RDNA type research. So,
understanding the challenges in dealing with revolving door,
right.
I understand it very well, given how long I worked on the Hill.
Right.
An event like this actually is a place where you can mix commercial, defense, university, and government sponsor to get some of that.
You have to get some, but you have to really I would love to get some commercial guys who have never worked government, don't know what it is, and put them into offices where they have to go through the prom process and see where things are going. I'd like to see if these guys in the program offices go into industry to say, hey, when you're executing a program, you got to remember, you got to live to what you wrote in that proposal, because
and
you
actually,
do anything like that.
You may not know this, but the Emerging Technologies Institute is taking advantage of the Public-Private Talent Exchange program.
Yes.
And we've got a Marine Corps civilian, a guy named Tom Driggers, working with us right now.
That's great.
He's getting a lot of interesting experiences working on the looking at things from an industry perspective that hopefully carries back to his Marine Corps civilian job when he returns. Okay, nice lead into the last question. You talked this morning about the need to know your customer, work with your customer.
Right.
You talked about the need for DoD to work with commercial sector more.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a challenge to the commercial guys, the VC-funded guys, the Silicon Valley guys? Are they doing enough to learn their DoD customer?
No.
Because some people would complain about them that they're just sort of standing back and waiting completely for DoD to come to them and not really making much of an effort to go to DoD. What would you say about that?
Well, I think that's why DIU is now, the Defense Division lost their X. Meaning, okay, this is institutionalized now. We have to do that. Having those type of innovations has to be there. And you have to talk to these guys. You know, at the end of the day, for the venture capitalists, it is about the money. You can make money on defense activities. And they are looking for innovation. What we really need is for the ANS side, and which is why I'm glad that they decided to take DIU back to report directly to the SecDef. Because the last thing you want is to get into that. You know, we've talked about the size of an R&E now. I'm not sure you kind of want people to navigate that. You want to go directly to the guys in the field, in the depots. What are you guys looking for? And a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing, the solicitations I'm seeing that are coming out of DIU now reflect that. Here's some instant changes, and it's really quite exciting. I think I would try to talk to these guys, encourage that even more, and maybe look at other innovation. You know, one reason why DIU's was, in my feeling, was focused on the Silicon Valley initially, and it should be, by the way, is because a lot of we rely on electronic systems. You're not going to find a better place in the world other than Silicon Valley for that. But there's got to be other technology hotspots within this country that we could focus on. Biotechnology, other type of things, the material sciences. Put a DIU there too, so the people who are looking to have
San Antonio.
Exactly. Put a DIU there to say, hey, what is going on here? These guys are doing stuff that is addressing these of those folks. In a way, there needs to be a restructuring, I think, of the entire. There's been a need to restructure the S&T community for some time now. And and the services have done a fantastic job of restructuring themselves to do that. I think that OSD, with the fact that they now have 50% of the S&T budget, needs to really take a quick look at themselves and say, okay, are we really the good stewards that we think that we're supposed to be? And what are we doing? Are we actually getting stuff out to the warfighter they're looking for? Or are we just building up infrastructures or, in some cases, bridges to nowhere? Somebody needs to come in to do an honest assessment on it. And the only people that can do that, in my mind, are people that come outside of the DoD world, or some of the things I taught, unicorns, people who have been on both sides, the DoD, the Defense Industrial Base, and the commercial, to say, why are we doing this again? Where is this really addressing? What are you trying to do? And frankly, be able to make the tough decision. Well, that's it. No, it's gone. So that's something that you
have to do that. With that, you opened yourself up to 10 more questions, but I understand you have a conference to run.
I understand.
So
yeah.
we're going to call
that.
it that. I want to thanks James Chu, the head of this S&ET division, for joining us during his conference here in San Antonio, Texas. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Emerging Technology Horizons podcast.
Thank you, guys.